actually existed
Oh,
when
your
my
head
kids
does
were
look a
young.
little more tan.
Exactly, had some sun. Good to ride the new Velocco Raptor roller coaster or whatever. Loved it.
Yeah, they were in the process of building, like Fast and Furious.
Oh, yeah.
When we were there. It was
Well, God, they're on like their 70th movie, so.
Recording in progress.
Okay. I don't think we put in touchscreens in the budget.
That's what I have to learn,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, it is 6 PM. It's January 17th, 2023, and I'd like to call the Sutton Select Board meeting to order, and if you'll join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Sutton Select Board is in a hybrid format with both in-person and Zoom component. To join the meeting, visit www.zoom.us/join and enter meeting ID 864-7871-7974, passcode 101422. The meeting will be broadcast and recorded on local public access station Verizon 31 and Charter Spectrum 191, and live streamed on the town's YouTube channel when available. And so next, we will have a roll call to let people know if we're attending this meeting in person or remotely.
David Hall in person.
Jesse Lemanik, physically here.
Wendy Mead in person.
Jonathan Anderson in person.
And Jeff Bannon in person as well. All right, so first up on our agenda tonight then is is public forum. And public forum is limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about a town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate any individual's rights. And is there anyone here for public forum? And is there anybody online for public forum? No? Okay. Pam, that's a no?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. So next on the agenda would be minutes from our last meeting.
Chairman, I move to accept the Select Board meeting minutes from January 3rd, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote on that?
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. Okay, so first, next up on the agenda then would be a public hearing for a poll hearing on Heritage Road. And if I could have the clerk read the announcement into the record for us.
As advertised in the December 29th, 2022 Millbury Sutton Chronicle, Town of Sutton Select Board Public Hearing Notice. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 2022, you are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 in the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, upon petition from N-Grid and Verizon New England for permission for N-Grid to install one jointly owned pole on Heritage Road beginning at a point approximately 350 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Dudley Road, installing one new 40-foot Class 3 midspan pole, a P1-50, with an anchored guy wire on Heritage Road. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as the petitioner desires for distributing purposes. Petitioner agrees to reserve space for one cross arm at a suitable point on pole for fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires belonging to the municipality for and used exclusively for municipal purposes. This will be a hybrid meeting with in-person and Zoom options. To join with Zoom, please use meeting ID 864-7871-7974 with a passcode of 101422. Plan file herewith marked number 306-76478.
Thank you. Jim, if you could just
Just,
give a brief.
is there anybody from National Grid here or online?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, so my understanding, there's new construction going on at Heritage at the entrance to Heritage off of, is it Dudley Road? So, there's a new house being built, so that's all I have to say.
Okay, sounds good. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on the new pole? All right.
Jay's on Zoom.
Yeah, we have someone from National Grid here.
Oh, okay. Mr. Lucier, I'm sorry.
Can you guys hear me?
I can, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Nope, just a new service, like you said. This pole specifically for an underground service to what I believe is 6 Heritage Road.
Okay. Great. Dave, do you have any comments?
Really no comments. There's nothing here that seems to be out of the ordinary or of a concern, so I'm fine.
Okay. Jesse?
I don't really have any questions for the National Grid, for Jay, but just for clarification points, was this the house that was in ill repair? Okay. Yep, so yeah, it's definitely gonna be an improvement to the neighborhood, so I'm all in favor of this.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions or concerns at
Okay.
this time.
No questions, concerns from me either.
And I have no issues with this at all either. So if we could then, unless there are additional comments from the public, if we could have a motion to close the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
And a roll call vote on that.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye?
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. And if we could have a motion on the poll itself.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve joint poll hearing number 306-76478 from N-Grid and Verizon for Heritage Road as advertised in the December 29th, 2022 Millbury Sutton Chronicle.
Second?
Motion and a second, and a roll call vote.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. That passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is another poll hearing. And if we could have, this is for poll hearing for Lackey Dam and Oakhurst Roads. And if the clerk would read that into the record for us.
Lucky you guys get to hear this again. As advertised in the December 29th, 2022 Millbury Sutton Chronicle, Town of Sutton Select Board Public Hearing Notice. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22, you are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held at 6:10 p.m. on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, in the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, upon petition from N-Grid and Verizon New England for permission for N-Grid to install 3 jointly owned poles on Lackey Dam Road, beginning at a point approximately 85 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Oakhurst Road, and continuing approximately 1,500 feet in a south direction. Install 1 jointly owned pole number 13-50 near the intersection of Lackey Dam Road and Oakhurst Road. Install 1 jointly owned pole number 16-84 and anchor near number 24 Lackey Dam Road. Install 1 jointly owned pole number 22-84 and anchor near 32 Lackey Dam Road. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as the petitioner desires for distributing purposes. Petitioner agrees to reserve space for 1 cross arm at suitable point on said poles for fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires belonging to the municipality and used for municipal exclusive purposes. This will be a hybrid meeting with in-person and Zoom options. To join with Zoom, please use meeting ID 864-7871-7974 with a passcode of 101422. Plan file herewith marked number 30637980.
Great. We need another vote for that, to open it, or did we do that?
Yeah, just declare it open.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding this is for improvements for the Blackstone Logistics Project. That's $650,000 50,000 square feet building, located 38% in Sutton, 52 in Uxbridge, and another 12 or so or 10 or so in Douglas. And there's another development down the street that's in Sutton, but they need access to Uxbridge's road on Lackey Dam Road. So I don't know which project. I assume this is for Blackstone Logistics project, but we can hear from National Grid.
Okay, and Mr. Lucier, are you also involved in this?
Yep, I am.
Okay. Could you just kind of confirm what the town manager just went over for us?
Basically, this is a job. We're shifting some load around, and we are looking to increase the reliability of the infrastructure in the systems. We're adding some reclosers and load breaks, which is what's 13-50 was one of the specific poles we were looking for permission for, has a new load break on it, which helps us to be able to shift between different feeders, if we do have problems out there. Realistically, it's just we're moving some stuff around to try to make it a little bit more reliable for the extra load we're going to pick up based upon that big building that is multi-towned, I guess.
Okay. And is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this? And if not, David, do you have any comments or concerns?
Comment or a question, I guess, for Mr. Lucier are these replacement poles? Are they like improvements to existing things, or are they just new poles going up in the vicinity?
We are replacing almost all of the existing infrastructure, as well as looking for permission for these 3 new pole locations. 2 of the new pole locations are just literally shifting to the opposite side of the street, whether it's for environmental reasons or maybe we're looking to get away from some trees that may be growing on one side or the other. And like I said, that third pole, 1350, is actually for a device up there that will help us with reliability.
Okay. We have comments here that Police, Fire, and Highway have looked at it with no comment, and I guess it's hard to argue with infrastructure that improves reliability. So, thank you.
Thanks, David. Jesse?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lucier, just real quick. So the existing poles, P22, P16, P13, are they going to remain in place, or are they going to be removed?
No, they will eventually be removed once the work is completed.
Okay, perfect. I know Dave touched upon it, but I just wanted to have clarity on that. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Wendy?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question, Jay. Do you need to get multi-town approval for this, or is it just Sutton?
Give me 1 second to look at the entire plan here, just so I can give you an accurate answer.
Yeah, thank you.
All of our infrastructure for this part of the plan is just Sutton, it appears. If we do go to Uxbridge, unfortunately, that goes down through our Hopedale barn as opposed to the Worcester barn. So that wouldn't be me at all.
Okay. Well, good for you.
Looking at the overall plan, everything on Lackey Dam Road that we're looking to do looks to be in Sutton itself.
Okay, thanks so much. That's my only question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't have any additional questions. I think my colleagues have covered most of it. So.
And the same goes for me. There's quite a robust round of questioning here for a poll hearing. So I will take a motion then to close the public hearing.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. And can we have a motion on the poll itself?
If I may, motion to approve the joint poll hearing number 306-37980 from National Grid and Verizon for Lackey Dam in Oakhurst Road as advertised in the December 29th, 2022 Millbury Sutton Chronicle.
I'll second that as well.
Motion and a second, and a vote on that.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lamanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lucier.
Thanks for your time.
All right. And once again, the next on the agenda, we have a public hearing, not a poll hearing this time, but on a 61A property for 236 Central Turnpike. And this is a public hearing that's been continued from our last meeting, January 3rd, 2023. And I would ask, though, that the clerk read the notice into the record again.
As advertised in the December 15th, 2022 Millbury Sutton Chronicle, continued from our meeting of 1/3/2023, notice of public hearing, Town of Sutton, Office of the Select Board. Notice is hereby given that the Sutton Select Board will hold a public hearing to discuss the town's options under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, Section 14, Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023, at 6 p.m. This hearing is regarding a Chapter 61A property which is located at 236 Central Turnpike, Assessors Map 25, Parcel 15th, and further described as 10.52 acres out of the 20.68 parcel to be removed from Chapter 61A and sold. Owner of record Deborah Kaczynski. This meeting will be a hybrid meeting held on the third floor of the Sutton Municipal Center, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. 01590. To join with Zoom, please use meeting ID 864-7871-7974, passcode 101422. The public is welcome to attend.
Thank you. So we will reopen the public hearing, and Jim, if you could kind of lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we continued the public hearing on January 3rd because we were contacted by the owner of the property saying things were going to change and relatively quickly. So they actually got the paperwork to us pretty quickly, so we were able to get it on tonight's agenda. Essentially, I think I might have said it at the last meeting, what they've done is sold essentially 4 housing lots versus the original intent of 5. So instead of the whatever it was, 10 plus acres, it's now 8.4 acres they're looking to take out of 61A. This will allow them to sell the land for $800,000, and it's likely that they will build 4 house lots at this location.
Okay, and just a technical question on is, does this reset the clock in terms of the whole timeline that we have to make the decision, or?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I don't know if the property owners are here, if they'd like to speak to us at all, or? Welcome. And if you could just identify yourself, tell us where you live, your address, and.
Yes, my name is Debbie Kaczynski, and I live at 215 Central Turnpike,
Okay.
across the street from the parcel of land that I'm planning on selling.
And my name's Trace Rowe. I'm Mrs. Kaczynski's son-in-law.
Okay.
And I'll be speaking to the matter just in her stead.
Sure, okay. And so, I don't know that, is there anything else that you'd like to add to what's been?
No, I don't think so. I think the original plan was to portion up the 5 lots. The developer changed his plan and asked if we could do 4 instead. So we went back, he presented another purchase and sale agreement, and we presented that to the town. So.
All right, thank you. So normally what we would do, we're going to ask the public if there's any input, and then we would go around and have some questions or comments on that for you, or just in general. So is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this? No, and no one online, I don't think. So we'll start with David then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. I don't really have any questions for you. I think from your perspective, this seems fairly straightforward. You're just selling a piece of property. Jim, you noted that, as you typically do, that in this case, most of the folks in town really don't express any particular interest in this. You know,
Certainly not the boards. I would say that a couple of department heads, fire and highway, expressed, interest in building a headquarters at this location, but,
so, that particular project has not been sort of, at least at this level, talked about in sort of a way that would create plans and sort of look forward to, how that might fit into our financial future, so.
Yeah, we did do a feasibility study. Tecton did the study back in 2015, I think. Police/highway needs analysis. So we do have some drawings for a highway facility, and we just, decided to move ahead with the police station at the Blue Jay, former
Sure.
Blue Jay property. But highway, we're still working under the current location.
Yep.
And,
Obviously, fire as well.
same. Well, fire is a little bit different. They have 3 good headquarters, 3.5 if you include the old police station that's now been fully renovated as their headquarters, if you will. So they do have 3 stations throughout the town.
Yeah.
I think Matt's idea is to, create a central headquarters and maybe close a station or 2 and combine them in a central location.
Sure.
But that's,
I got it, but
as
until
part
that's
of the
vetted
capital
out, yeah,
Plan for 2026, 2027,
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet.
sure, I understand that part. What came to my mind as this came up is that you could see how potentially this, location-wise might be useful for something like that if you were to do it. And what really came to mind was not so much that we should be thinking about it, because I agree with you, until it's sort of in a plan that's been vetted and thought through. It's just the nature of 61As where you have such little time to respond, to be flexible when the right thing comes up is a bit of a challenge, I guess is all, so. But I'll kind of go with your thinking on that until you've put that through a process that identifies it as a real need with timing, there's no point in really considering
The
a location for something that doesn't.
The fire headquarters, I don't see a need right now. However, if and when we have to take over ambulance and house the ambulance crew and go full ambulance for the town of Sutton because, whatever happens, maybe MedStar doesn't provide us. MedStar currently provided us a 5-year contract. It expires 4 or 5 years from now. So we're okay in the short term, and I think Matt's just thinking ahead.
Sure.
Like he normally does, and anticipating at some point we might not be able to get an ambulance contract. And at that point, we've got to start thinking of a transition. And then we have to house the, paramedics and so forth, and the vehicles 24/7. It's a different challenge at that point.
Okay. Well, great explanations, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Dave. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I read both Matt's comments that were included in the packet last time. And I'll be honest with you, I understand what you said, Jim, that there's nothing on the short-term radar, but I wonder, do we currently have any parcels under town control that could house a facility of this scale, a new fire station, a new highway barn, salt, in a place that would be ideally located? I think of all the highway apparatus, they all have to go by this parcel when they pull out onto the highway and then go up onto Central Turnpike and go out. We have the spreading out of stations 1, 2, and 3. I think Chief Belcito had mentioned the possibility of closing Station 1 and one of the others, putting them in a centralized location on a main road. Again, I don't know. I understand that there's nothing on the near horizon, but I wonder if long-term this might be a good space for, such usage, I guess you could say. And again, I don't know, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and I understand that. The other concern, again, reading when I read Chief Belcito's comments, was what's going to happen if we get to the point where we no longer have an on-call fire department and we have to have a full-time operational staff. It doesn't seem logistically wise to have them spread out all in town. So again, consolidation, it does make sense. And I'm sure down the road there'll be other opportunities, but you know, it comes down to location, 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 and I see this as just prime real estate. And I think it might be something we might want to seriously consider, but I don't know.
Yeah, the only challenge, you know, look, I agree to some extent. It really is a discussion over needs versus wants. I mean, I would like all of this location to be available for the town. You know, I really don't want to spend $800,000 that we don't have. You know, we'd have to spend down the capital stabilization fund down to zero. You know, I'm trying to, you know.
I understand.
There are other properties down the street and along the way that are currently for sale or could be a site. They're not under town control, but I hear your frustration. I have that same frustration.
I just think of how we caught lightning in a bottle when we got the Blue Jay lot. You know, now granted it was a long process to get it, but we got it. It was ideal. We got it at the right time, and we made use of it when we were able to. So that's my thought on it. Other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Mr. Comments, Jesse? Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make note that the purchase and sale has no exclusion for non-residential property. So were it feasible, that would be an option, but I don't really think financially it is. I'm just curious, do you intend to try and take the remainder out of the property out of 61A?
Eventually, that is the plan down the road. It'll probably be several years.
So not just the 5th plot, but the entirety of the property?
There are
Just one side.
well, there
now.
are seven lots that were broken out in the A&R plan, and so it'll be 5, 6, and 7 eventually down the road at some point.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
That was my only question and comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question for you. So that 5th lot, is that actually coming out of 61A right now, or?
Not at this
No.
point.
Staying, okay, that's what I was, because
Not
when
until we
the
get it sold.
public hearing, we still read the 10 acres.
Yeah, so that's, and again, it's down to what, it's a little over 8 acres
Yep.
that are going to be in this batch of 4 lots. Lot 5 will remain in 61A, as will 6 and 7 at this point.
Yeah, just for clarification, I think it was because I had to read the original one into the record, so even though it had been modified, so it was confusing.
Just a point of clarification, you had a different Zoom address too, but I wasn't going to mention it.
Because the wrong one would have been problematic.
You're done now, so.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your clarification on that. Yeah, I agree with Jim on this, his approach on this. I think it's a little bit too early. While it is nice to be proactive in thinking about this, and this is a good location for central location for in the town. I think that it would be a little bit early and probably presumptuous at this point, because we're still not even sure if we're heading down that direction yet. So, yeah. So I think letting this. I mean, I always hate to see fields go up into the housing, but you know, we can't just buy every parcel that comes up. So, yeah. So I think at this point, you know, my thought is just to not to pass on this.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So, you know, when this came up, it kind of, I had a lot of reservations about letting this pass us by, similar to what you and David had mentioned, and for a lot of different reasons. One is just, you know, kind of the chipping away of the fabric of the town, you know, turning a, you know, really pristine land into, you know, some more house lots, but more so, you know, I was thinking that, not even so much specifically whether we have any near-term needs for a fire station. I agree with everyone's thought on that, but really looking at the, you know, the whole picture of all these 40B projects coming, that are back to back to back to back coming at us. At some point, you know, the population is going to grow around here, and at some point, our needs are going to grow, will grow with that. And I've just got a feeling that, you know, when we vote for this tonight, there's going to be at some point down the road a woulda, coulda, shoulda moment that we may have. So, but I agree. I mean, there's nothing. The problem with these 61A issues when they come before us is we have to make a decision right then and there, and it's not a planned out kind of a decision. So, you know, right now we don't have really a feasible way to finance it comfortably. So I think, you know, it makes sense to pass on it, but it does bother me. I just hate to see this property go by for us. So, but what I think one thing it does do, in, you know, this discussion tonight, is we should begin to think about some of those long-term issues that some of these projects may bring with them, you know, and infrastructure needs and so forth. So. So that's all I have. If there's other comments from the public or from the board, if not, we will take a motion then to close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
And vote on that, David?
David Hall, aye.
Justin Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. And a motion on the,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to not exercise the town's option under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, for property located at 236 Central Turnpike, 8.4 acres of the 20.68 parcel known in the assessor's map at 25, parcel 15, owned by Deborah Kaczynski.
Second.
motion and a second. Do we have a roll call vote on that?
Just for clarification, you did say motion not to exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. David Hall, aye.
Justin Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye. So that is 5-0. Congratulations. Thank you for coming in. All right. And next up, we have an appointment to the Board of Health of Ronald Sansucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, I'm recommending that we appoint Ronald Sansucci to the 3-year term to the Board of Health. Mr. Sansucci lives at 93 Purgatory Road, former wastewater superintendent. Mr. Sansucci will be replacing a vacancy left by Bill Frederickson, who, you know, served the Board of Health for 14+ years. So we want to thank Mr. Frederickson for his years of service, and Mr. Sansucci is before you.
Great, thank you. And thank you to Mr. Frederickson for his service. Mr. Sansucci, welcome. And if you maybe just give us a brief introduction to you and what you've done all these years, and why would you want to be on the Board of Health?
Well, for the last 28 years, I worked for the town of Upton, and from 2000 till 2015, I ran the water and wastewater department. So I have some experience with
Great.
public water and wastewater. And the Board of Health says it might be helpful with them.
Terrific. All right. And if you don't mind, we would, if we could maybe lob some softball questions at you and get you out of here in time for the meeting to start down the hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I kind of agree with the Board of Health. This does seem like a pretty good background to help them out. So how did you hear about the position? And despite your background, you still had to want to step up and help. How did?
Well, there was a development going on next to me on Purgatory Road, and I had some questions on the clustered housing with water withdrawal, because they're all close together. It's like a well field. And that's, I went to the planning board meeting, then I went to the Board of Health, and they asked me to come to one of their meetings.
So they hooked you.
Right?
Excellent. That's the way it works. Well, you know, as we like to do at these things, This is a classic
Might learn
example.
something.
We'd like to thank people for stepping up and helping us out, and you're replacing Mr. Frederickson, who spent 14 years serving in this role, and that's pretty tremendous. So not that we're putting you on the hook for 14 years, but, maybe. We always say the town can't run without people stepping up to help, so thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Sansucci. It sounds like you were kind of voluntold to participate. And trust me, as someone who somehow gets roped into many things, I appreciate that. So, excellent job. Now, Board of Health is a great board. You'll definitely learn a lot. Cheryl is a wonderful lead person on that. So, thank you for stepping up, giving your time and expertise to the town. And hopefully you won't run into too many wastewater type situations. But you never know, right? You
Right.
never know. But congratulations and good luck tonight.
All right, yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Wendy?
Thank you so much. And is it your left or right arm that is so easily twisted? I'm asking for future reference. Just thank you to Bill. 14 years is a long time. Sometimes it feels longer than others. Is this an associate position or a full position?
Full position.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for volunteering and taking advantage of your expertise.
You're
I
welcome.
think be an asset to the town. So thank you so much, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mrs. Sansucci, for volunteering. And I just want to warn you, just be careful, because I did the same thing and I ended up here. So. Yeah, I just have one question. So you'll also be doing septic system inspections as well, or?
I don't think so.
No.
I just, they just said the board, so.
Okay, all right. No, I just want to thank you for,
See, I've been public wastewater, which
is it
isn't,
different?
like for an individual system. It's a little bit more involved.
Okay. Yeah, definitely with the growth, it's probably can become very important. But yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your, I guess, willingness to volunteer. And again, like most of our colleagues, we've, the day-to-day operations run with the staff of the town hall, but a lot of the operations around are, volunteers are really pivotal in boards like this to help keep things going. So thank you very much for your willingness to serve.
Thanks, Jonathan. I can remember my phone call with Carla Capoli, too, inviting me to serve a long time ago. So I can't add anything to what's been said. Thank you for just for stepping up, because it's just good to get people with some kind of relevant experience on these boards. So that's tremendous. So thank you. Enjoy your meeting tonight. Hopefully we got you in and out of here on time. So
Okay.
Right.
All set?
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Momentarily, do we have to take a
Oh, we do have to take a motion to make that official.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Ronald Sansucci to the Board of Health for a 3-year term to fill the vacancy left by Bill Frederickson.
Second?
I have a motion and a second, and have a vote on that.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Ayers, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. Congratulations. Thank you.
Really, man?
Thank you again. All right. Next on our agenda is the Campanelli 40B development and a potential or consideration of entering into a memorandum of agreement.
Thank you, Mr.
Jim.
Chairman. Obviously, we had Campanelli before this board a couple of months ago, November 1st, I think. One of the principals, Russell Dion, has been in constant contact with me, pushing the ball forward and wanting to come before the board. We did have the town council presentation at the last meeting to talk about pros and cons, most of them cons, with 40B developments. And they suggested potentially a memorandum of agreement to be entered into. I did have a conversation with Russell Dion regarding his interest in entering into an MOA. He expressed some interest in that. mentioned a couple of the issues that I have heard the board talking about, mainly traffic, the width of Armsby Road, the density of this project. And, you know, we had a little bit of a discussion back and forth on that. But before I went any further, I just wanted to get the board's thought. Ultimately, this will be before you folks to decide whether you want to move forward or not. And then the option is then on the developer's side, whether he wants to go unfriendly and that whole procedure that Amy Questle laid out at the last meeting. But I'm just trying to advance this and continue this discussion. As you see in the update, there's another 40B coming before the board at the next meeting on February 7th. So I just put it in your hands as to what's the wish of the board.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, that we are not talking about approving or entering into a friendly 40B at this point. We're talking about entering into negotiations for an acceptable memorandum of agreement, MOA. And once that would be negotiated, at that point, then the board would vote yes or no to enter into a friendly versus a friendly 40B at that point, subject to the memorandum of agreement. So I think that discussion we had last week was helpful, and let's see what we have for comments and thoughts on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think it's the right time to have this question before us now. You know, as I said last meeting, I was happy to have the presentation that we had. You know, we've had other 40Bs come to us, but not really in a formal sense. You know, so at least from my perspective, I think what we heard last time was really a great opportunity for me, and I think for the whole board, to sort of learn about what we could do, where we need to go, if we, where we might need to deal with these 40B proposals when they do come up. And I feel like the prospect of entering into negotiations over an MOA for the public, that's a memorandum of agreement, thank you. Yeah, for me, not the public. So we can negotiate in advance certain, let's say, restrictions to the proposal as it exists to try to get something a little bit better. I think it's, from my perspective, it's worth doing that. I want to do that to find out kind of where we might go with this. You know, I felt pretty good about counsel that was here. She was very knowledgeable about the subject. I think can bring to the table some potential negotiating points and help us get further than we would get on our own. So I'm very comfortable with her representing us. You know, what I tried to say last time, I don't know how well it came out, but you know, I feel like the easy answer here would just be to say no and move on. But I think the state has been very clear about their desire to get more housing, and they've created 40B and some other types of initiatives to, I don't want to say to force it upon towns, cities and towns, but it certainly feels that way. You know, and there's some positive things about this particular 40B. This developer, to as near as I can tell from what I've seen, what I've heard, checks out pretty well. This proposal has, at least in my opinion, you know, it's a decent looking proposal. But more than that, I think my worry is what happens if we say no, and what other proposals might come at us, and what you know, what an unfriendly 40B in this very location might look like. You know, if we don't at least do our due diligence to see where we might take it. So, you know, as Jeff points out, this is not, you know, an agreement to. It's not an agreement to push this forward in terms of agreeing to the friendly 40B, but it is taking the next step to kind of find out what's possible for us. So, that's my perspective on it, and so I would like to move forward with this, and that's kind of where I am. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to echo some of the points that Dave just made, obviously the presentation at our last meeting was very thorough, that's for sure. And I'll be honest with the public, I was very disheartened when I left, because the more I heard, the more I was infuriated. Jonathan used the phrase unconstitutional, but I'd rather use a more precise phrase of anti-constitutional. We hear about we live in a democracy all the time, democracy, democracy, democracy. But again, this is further proof that we actually don't. Because democratically, town meeting gathered together, made certain zoning restrictions based upon what is the actual needs of the town, and yet through statutory processes, those desires of the residents can be completely ignored, superimposed, trampled on. And it just really, really infuriates me. And it's nothing about this particular process, this project, but it's the process in general. It's just so frustrating. And they cloak it in clever euphemisms, like the phrase that was mentioned was consistent with local needs. I'm sorry, we don't need a nearly 10% swell in population. We don't need hundreds of new cars driving on a tight, narrow road. We don't need the drain on the limited capacity of services we have. We just don't need that. And I'll be honest, my opinion has not changed. I am not going to vote in favor of this project because I don't see this as being positive for the town in any way. I see a logistic nightmare for the residents who are there presently. I see it's going to impact PV, which sold, which is wonderful. That's going to come in the update, and all of the seasonal traffic that goes that way. What was mentioned to one of my questions was the water capacity. Wilkinson Waterville does not have capacity, and here we are in wintertime, and I got my bill, and it said right on it that we're in a stage 2 water ban. It's in the middle of winter, and Wilkes doesn't have enough water. So if we were to allow something this sizable go in, I think it's going to cripple us in the short term, and I think it will cripple us in the long term. So I cannot in any way, shape, or form, in good faith, even politically say that I'd be willing to listen. I just can't. I just don't think this will be good. So, yeah, I'll be voting no against this motion, but I'm sure my colleagues will have other opinions, and that's their right. But again, I'll only vote for things that are good, I think, for good of the town, and this is just not it. So I apologize.
Excuse me, when is the public going to be able to make comments at the end of your discussions?
Actually, this is a discussion for the board itself, and it's not a public hearing. So this will just be a board discussion. All right. So nothing to apologize, Jesse.
That's all I have then. Thank you, Mr.
That's fine. Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for a point of clarification, we're not voting on the project tonight. We're voting on the MOA. And the reason I support the MOA, not the project itself, is I think that as a result of the MOA, it may in fact substantiate reasons to enter into an unfriendly 40B agreement. So there's a lot of questions about traffic, there's a lot of questions about water, there's a lot of questions about school capacity. I think that the MOA may actually work, I don't want to say for the town, but for both sides, those in favor and those opposed to the project. We need more information. And what we learned last week, and I went back through the PowerPoint slides today, is at the end of the day, whether it's a friendly agreement or an unfriendly agreement, we lose any capacity to be involved in that anymore. So that's why I think that MOA, if we can have town council do the negotiating, I think it will actually at the end of the day benefit the town. She's town council, she's not Campanelli council. So I actually am in favor of the MOA, but again, we're not voting to approve the project, just to get more information. Accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know any other way to move the ball forward other than just to present it and yes or no. Well, do you want us to do this or not? And then, say if the vote is no, then, not exercising the process of going through an MOA when we can get to serious concessions that's actually a contract that the developer needs to abide by, to me is just an error in process. We need to bring it to the nth degree and then figure out what we have before us. If it doesn't meet the board's satisfaction at that point, then you vote the way you vote. But, I'm doing my job as I see I have to do my job, to support the town and knowing the laws of the state, so.
Yeah, and so again, just to clarify, in case anybody wasn't able to see the meeting last week, but 2 weeks ago, we're not voting for the project, we're not voting for friendly and unfriendly, we're just voting to have town council get some answers to these questions. And I, for one, would like some more answers because, as Jesse inferred, we still don't know about a lot of things. I can envision some problematic things, but I'd like some very specific information. So that is the whole point of tonight's question, is just, do we enter into negotiations on an agreement which may become unfriendly, and so then it would go to the state. So at that point, we have no control vote or anything else at that point. So I'm actually in favor of this motion because I would like more information for the community. It won't just be for this board, it'll be for the community as an entirety, particularly those who are directly impacted. So I actually would like to support this motion so that I don't feel like we're being short-sighted. So those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with what Jesse said, and also with my comments from the last meeting about this. And I kind of liken it to like our, past several presidential elections where you've got two choices and neither one of them are very good. So you got to choose the option that is at least going to do the least amount of harm. And I do question the legality of this, but we're just one town, and I think a lot of towns would have to band together to kind of deal with that, and it's probably beyond what's reasonable at this point. But in hindsight, after that discussion from last week, what I really got is that if we try to enter into an MOA, at least we could potentially address some of the concerns that we have, and potentially, my biggest concern would be about reducing the density and getting the number of units down, because we can still fail at that and they just go on and go through the process. So we don't have any control whether that process moves forward or not. We just have a potential possibility of being able to negotiate, because they get benefits from the, was it LIB or LIP? They get benefits from that, and that's, I think an area that could have some leverage for us to have this negotiation and potentially look at some of these big challenges that we have and negotiate. And if it fails, then the answer would be pretty clear for us, to vote to not have a friendly 40B. But if we do, we could potentially reduce the numbers, where otherwise it seemed pretty bleak. Unless the water issue, I think that's probably the biggest issue here. But it seemed pretty bleak as to us being able to, if just this moves forward beyond to the, through the process, we didn't seem like we had much choice into being able to reduce the numbers or anything like that. So to me, this is like our kind of one shot to try to make this happen. So that's kind of my thinking on it. As much as when I walked in last week, I was very much against having any agreement, but I think we should at least try. So that's my thinking right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, I think just around this board, I think it's probably unanimous, that no one's in favor of the project itself. I know I live there, so I don't, I don't want to see this go in. I think maybe one of the misconceptions that may have been started to get cleared up after the last meeting is we don't have a lot of control over it. And what we do have, this particular board has some control over setting maybe some broad parameters of a project that may or may not go forward, but it won't not go forward because of some of us not voting for a favorable 40B. It's going to go forward if it's going to go forward. I don't know. So, you know, I'd like to have some of those those broad parameters, I guess, in place that we can mitigate the effects of this project to the extent we can. And I don't know what the water issue will turn out to be, if the project itself will be self-limited because of that, but we'll see. I just think that for tonight, in terms of what we're actually voting on, we're not voting on the project itself. We're voting on whether to move forward with a negotiation for those parameters that would become a contract, as opposed to saying no and turning everything over to turning the decision-making over to the state. My thought would be that we would at least move forward with this, see where it takes us, and see what kind of limitations we can have on the project. So that's my thought on it.
Mr. Chair, may I?
You sure may.
With the board's agreement, I would just like to address the people who are here and on Zoom, just with a little bit of background information from our last meeting. There's a lot of acronyms, so just to clarify a few things, the MOA negotiation would be to come to parameters or boundaries and METs for the potential development, not approving the development, not approving it. That was redundant. If the MOA is entered into by all the parties and it comes back to us and we don't think it is practical, sufficient, or appropriate, we can then vote against it, and that would be an unfriendly 40A.
40B.
40B. Thank you. If it becomes unfriendly, the contractor and developer then have the right to go to the state to get permission, so it's entirely out of our hands at that point. If they're turned down, then they actually have an appeals process they can go through, as do residents in different venues, however. So I just wanted to make that clear in case you weren't able to watch or attend the last meeting. It's a substantial process. I think it's a little bit in favor of developers, but the reason I want to vote in favor of this tonight is just so we can get more information. That agreement could talk about traffic studies. That agreement could talk about town population impact on schools, all of those things. So again, I didn't mean to take the conversation away from the board. I just wanted to offer some information from what we were educated about at our last meeting. So thank you for your graciousness.
I just have one point of clarification, and it could be based on a misunderstanding. I believe whether it's friendly or unfriendly, the process is still the same. I think they're still going to go before the ZBA.
Yes.
And the ZBA, the local board, is going to have control. But if it's unfriendly, it increases their ability to appeal ZBA decisions.
Correct.
So it's not that if we go unfriendly, they're going to be able to go right to the state and do whatever they want. They're still going to have to go through the process.
Correct.
If I had that right.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that came out of that meeting was that, in what David mentioned tonight, is the state's bent these days is towards in favor of the developers, and so a lot of those decisions will be,
Yeah, they don't care about the towns at all.
they don't. So, yeah, so it's we're in a rock and a hard place here. So, but this is one, to me, it's an opportunity to at least establish some limitations if we can get the density down and see, where we can go, and if it's come to some kind of an acceptable development, whatever that means.
Just the last comment, picking up on what Wendy talked about, I just would encourage people that didn't see it to go watch last meeting, because I think it is helpful from an education standpoint to know kind of what we're dealing with here.
is that PowerPoint on the town website? I know Amy had talked about it.
Yeah, it's the YouTube. You just go into YouTube section of the videos, and you can just pull up the last select board meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think the PowerPoint presentation itself was very technical and,
Acronyms.
yeah, there were a lot of acronyms there. But I think the discussion afterwards in the comments that Amy had for us were very, very helpful, I think, in explaining things, so.
Great.
Okay, so we're going to take a motion, whether or not to enter into an MOA.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to enter into a memorandum of agreement known as an MOA between the town of Sutton and Campanelli for a 40B local initiative known as an LIP.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments or discussion? We'll take a vote on that.
David Hall, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, no.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye. All right, that passes 4-1. See where we go. Thank you, everybody. All right, next up is the town manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of 40Bs, Elite Home Builders are coming before the board at the next meeting on February 7th. This is, the firm owner is Stephen Benacasa. I don't know whether he'll be here or one of his principal developers. They're proposing a 100-plus unit rental unit development behind Galaxy Plaza. That's the next 40B. Now, we did have a meeting with Mr. Benacasa and James Almonte, I think, at some point, maybe it was December, early January. He talked about his plans. Access to Boston Road will not be where it is currently gated and for sale sign on the side of the road. It would be through the signalized intersection at Galaxy Plaza. But, you know, that's pretty much the only information I have. He did give us a rough idea of, it's very different from what we're considering under Campanelli. It's basically one building, three-sided with probably 4 stories, and an open back side. South side would be open to the, but that's pretty much it, and parking underneath and around the building. They will be rental units, and they are looking for a friendly 40B process through the board. So this would be the first meeting, similar to Campanelli. They came in November 1. So it's starting the process. As we know, they can, kind of ignore the board and go file with the town clerk and start the timeline and so forth. So I like to keep this positive while we can, and, listen to these developers and then take it from there. As Selectman Lemanik mentioned, sale of Pleasant Valley Country Club has been sold to Galaxy Developers, ironically, the same firm that owns Galaxy Plaza. It's a different, I guess, side of the Galaxy arm, but
Subsidiary.
subsidiary.
It's on the Secretary of State's website.
I don't know much about golf course ownership, but apparently they acquired it for $4.1 million. And they feel like they can make a good run of it, and hopefully we see some significant upgrades to the country club and the golf course, and everything goes smoothly. We would like to thank the McGills for their ownership of the country club. They did a great job. I think once their father passed away, the kids kind of enthusiasm, and they are still the owners of Highfields in Grafton, and I think that's great. So we want to thank them for their good years of ownership. And finally, expansion of cable hybrid format. You may recall back, I think it was over the summer, where the state told us that hybrid format would continue until March. In anticipation of potentially hybrid being required by municipalities, which could happen, and I think many of us are expecting it to happen. So we outfitted 1C with hybrid. So now you can have a meeting in this room or down the hall at 1C. So really it was an effort by Pam and Christine to outfit the whole system, and I just really appreciate their efforts to, technology, get us up to speed, and we're ready for whatever may come down in a couple months from the state. So thanks to the communications department, they did a great job, and there's a meeting running hybrid down the halls right now. So that's all I have for updates, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Why not? Thank you, Jim. Great update. It's interesting, this first item on the on your update, as was alluded to earlier, this was going to be here. We have not seen this, so I really don't know what it looks like or really anything about it. What we did learn at our last meeting, though, is that we probably only need to deal with a certain number of these at a given time, so that one may sort of obviate the other, at least for a period of time, and so that the town may or may not have to deal with the whole number of these coming along, kind of one after the other. So again, just part of the learning process. We'll see what happens. The golf course is an interesting thing to me. Like, I don't really know what to make of this at this point. The McGills really did come at the right time and do great work there. Pleasant Valley, as we all know, is such a iconic part of town with a really long history that we don't want to see broken. So I hope this particular subsidiary of Galaxy is good at owning golf courses, and we wish them luck with that, but I'd like to see it go well. Another interesting topic is the cable hybrid format. We saw tonight the advantages of having hybrid formats available, right? You have a poll hearing, and you don't make somebody from National Grid drive who knows how far across the state to come to a meeting for 5 minutes where, frankly, not much gets said. So it's really beneficial to have that in some ways. But we also see the other side of it. Tonight we have 2 meetings going on, and one of our 2 technology people was unable to be here today, so Pam's running between 2 meetings trying to keep both of them running. The other thing that we learned is that it's a fairly technical process, so you need to be well-trained to be able to do this. We used to be able to hire high school kids to come run the meetings, and it's just not that easy to do anymore. So if it does become mandated by the state, which I kind of agree with you, I think the benefits are hard to ignore, and it seems like they might well do that. We just have to be cognizant of how taxing it is on our staff to be able to man all these meetings. So,
I might make the argument that it really is an unfunded mandate to require this because the technology is advanced. You can't have high school kids.
Yeah.
You can. There are some very talented ones, but it's a time commitment and everything else. So.
And as we know, our staff works very hard to begin with, and then to extend their days into nights so many times is just a lot. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chair.
Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to reserve my comments on number 1 till next week or the next meeting. Congratulations on PV. I think it was the Worcester Journal or someone was sharing an article, and I read it online. And it sounds like one of the partners of this subsidiary is a golfer himself. So, and I think he wanted to purchase it the last time it was available, but got beat out on the bid or something along the line. So I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm. I think he understands, the new team understands the history of it. They're very excited in preserving PV, so I think it's going to be very exciting. I think they also talked about they wanted to open up a restaurant. You know, they wanted to attract more business, so this is something we want. This is going to be a positive. So I definitely wish the new group all the luck. You know, I hope they enjoy tremendous success. And who knows, maybe one of these days I'm going to be able to go to one of the tournaments and actually play PV, make some good divots, as I'm very efficient at.
They're the ones that keep the sand on the.
Exactly. Hey, I keep the grounds crew working, that's
They
for
need
sure.
excavation projects.
Yeah,
They're the guy.
exactly. Yeah, if you need a digger, call me. Yeah, so that's very exciting. And as far as the hybrid, I'm going to echo Dave's comment. I understand and definitely I appreciate all the work that Pam and Christine do, but there's definitely a benefit to it. And I think where we have the technology in place, I think it would just be a matter down the road if it becomes too cumbersome of staffing. You know, figure out a way to get somebody else that is an adult or maybe one of the highly trained kids down at the school and just give them a shot, because if this is the way it's going to be, you got to have the personnel in place, because to your point, you don't want to have just two people. You don't want to burn them out.
Right.
So if we can get additional support, if that's what's going to be the permanent process, then I think that would be beneficial in the long run. And of course, that's not to say I tremendously appreciate all that Pam and Christine do. So I just want to put that on the record a second time. But other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jesse. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, thank you, Jim. Question on the other proposed 40B. Do you know if that is proposing to address the affordable housing percentage in town?
If that was what?
Going to address the affordable housing percentage, is it 9%?
10%.
Or 10?
You know, I have to do the math. Right now, we're at 1.5, so we're vulnerable to this.
But there are provisions in there for affordable housing, or?
It would be a 40B. It would be,
Oh, okay.
it would be affordable housing.
Okay.
You know, 10% of the units would be required to have 3 bedrooms. But, you know, all the issues that we're talking about with Campanelli would apply to this one.
Okay.
You know, probably 80% of median income for the affordable units, and the rest would be market rate.
Okay. And I agree, it's a little premature to go much further than that. Excited for Pleasant Valley, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're keeping on their head golf pro. So the consistency, I think, is going to be fantastic, and I hope they get some large PGA and LPGA tournaments there. And I read an article on their new business model, and it's really kind of neat. It's going to stay a private club, but the facilities, the banquet facilities and such, will become open to the public to draw in some additional revenue. So I think that's nice. It's going to give people an opportunity to experience the golf course to some degree. So best of luck, and the McGills are still in the game. And as David said at the last meeting in Roundtable, he was very glad I didn't come because I was very contagious. So I was sitting at home on Zoom. So, you know, I think that really, you know, sort of demonstrates the value of having the meeting. If somebody gets stuck at work, you can appear from your office, et cetera.
By truck?
In the vehicle, yes, as well. Not on camera, so you were driving cautiously.
By electric vehicle? Could I?
No.
Not while you were
You
driving.
drain the
though.
battery
It
too
needs to be
fast. Yeah.
But just thanks to Pam and Christine. Pam's getting her steps in, running back and forth tonight. So thank you to both of you, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Jim, for your update. Yeah, I think, you know, this item number 1 on this next 40B is obviously very concerning, and we have a few more lined up as well. You know, I'm trying to think of any way that we can, you know, kind of deal with this. So it's unfortunately, we're kind of dealing with this in the moment, and it's very hard to be, you know, proactive, since this has been around for a long time, since the 1960s. It's now hitting us hard, and it's just very frustrating to watch the potential growth of this town that, in such a fast state, without really our input, is really quite concerning. And I live here because I choose to live in a community that's more rural and like that type of culture. And I feel like that's being kind of taken away from us, not only with the 40B, but also with the, the MBTA communities as well. And again, I think the state's approach on this just almost causes people to push back because, we have no say in it. And I think it's just really the wrong approach. And the funny thing is I sit and look at the data around it. This has been going on since the 1960s. And this is supposed to reduce or, add more affordable housing and reduce housing costs here in Massachusetts. And in fact, it's done the exact opposite. So I don't think anybody's looking at that. I think we're just checking off a box of how many units we have. And then we're passing on the costs to the residents in the rest of that community and beyond, because now that becomes a marker for what rentals become in that area. So again, there's a lot of issues with these type of programs, and typically they don't work. It's very easy to find the research around that. So unfortunately, we have a lot of these coming. I'm not really sure what the answer is going to be. I got from this meeting, we will not, if these developers, get their paperwork in before the 40B would be complete, then we would not be able to get safe harbor. So that's what really scared me is before I thought we would get safe harbor with a big project. And then now I'm hearing, no, if they get their paperwork in and before the project's done, then we're kind of stuck. So that's a big concern for me. And the only thing I can just recommend to people, if you're upset about this, is to reach out to your state representatives, because this is really a state level issue. And it's a town rights issue as well. And over the time, the state has slowly but surely eroded our ability to govern ourselves. So that's just kind of my thoughts around that, just beyond just this particular issue. I'm relieved to hear that Galaxy is not purchasing this for the development of this property. Because that was the first thing I thought when I saw Galaxy being a developer for large-scale projects. So I really wish them well, and also want to thank the McGills for their ownership and leadership time and the improvements that they made over time. And as far as the cable hybrid format, there are obviously lots of benefits. To your point, again, another kind of mandate from the state, which is unfunded, which is kind of creates this kind of area where we have to kind of rob Peter to pay Paul to pay for things, or not pay for them and have to rely on existing resources to have to work many more hours. And I think that's my biggest concern about this, even though I think it's a great thing. And it's just, how do we fund the support so that, so that Pam and Christine don't have to be here every single night of the week for meetings on top of their day job. So that's a big concern for me. And so I'm not sure how we can do that, but that's something I think we should definitely think about, especially now we have these 2 rooms. So those are my thoughts on that. So thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, the another 40B, I think what this just illustrates is, if not Campanelli, then it's somebody else that's going to come in. So, I guess when I see these things and I think about, we can say no all we want to a developer, but you know what? There's going to be somebody right in line, next in line, to come in to develop a property. It's just not going to sit there. So that's, I guess, circling back to that prior discussion. I think it's very frustrating to me that the whole issue, and not even so much, the law's been around for 50 years. I think we can bang our head against the wall for that, trying to oppose that. But it's really what we can do at the board level here. And I don't, I'm frustrated by it, about the limit of our options that we have with this. So we'll see how what this one looks like. Pleasant Valley, hopefully that, I had the same concerns about development, and hopefully it stays a golf course, and I know I would like that being in a butter. And, the cable, I guess my take on it is, thank you, Pam, thank you, Christine. What this town does with the filming of the meetings is just, it's remarkable for a town this size. And just even tonight saying, go look at the YouTube video. There's not a lot of towns that can do that. So, Pam, thank you. When you were out, we thanked you, and Christine. That's all I have. Thank you, Jim. All right. So next up would be announcements, roundtable, and correspondence.
Mr. Chairman, I am all set, thank you.
Great. Jesse?
I only have the food pantry list, and ironically, it's the same list they sent me from the last meeting, but I will repeat it nonetheless. They're looking for coffee, beef stew, canned potatoes, juice, preferably the individual juice boxes, low sugar option if possible, mayonnaise, crackers of all different kinds, of course, laundry detergent, general cleaning supplies, and hand soap. And toiletries would also be useful as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Wendy, do you have some words of wisdom for us tonight?
Questionable whether wisdom or not, but I do. Taking the 40B issue, there's a lot of other issues in this town. We, for the most part, live here for the makeup of this town, and I hate to see it devolve into a bitter debate. A debate is healthy by virtue of its own definition, and I just hope people don't forget to be kind, thoughtful, and respectful to each other, because the town obviously has a lot coming, and stable heads will prevail, or at least be heard, whether or not the ultimate outcome is what we want. But I think we all have to remember just to stay kind. And maybe limit social media might be good, but that's a whole nother issue. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Wendy. Jonathan?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
And I'm going to leave it with Wendy as well. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And can I get a vote on that?
David Hall, aye.
Oh, Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
And Jeff Bannon, aye. And we are in